Okay, let's talk about J. Hector St. Jean de Crevecoeur. De Crevecoeur was a Frenchman from a well-off family. As a young man, he ran away from home and went to Canada, where he fought actually against the French with the British. After he mustered out of his service, he got married and he bought a farm in upstate New York, where he lived a good life in America. And he knew that the people of Europe were very curious about how the settlers in the American colonies were getting on and how they lived. So, in order to satisfy that curiosity, he began writing a book. The book takes the form of 12 essays, and he called the entire collection Letters from an American Farmer. He was right in thinking that he would have a large audience. When he publishes the book, it was a bestseller in Europe. So the letter that we're reading today, or the letter that you're reading this week, is the third of 12, and it's the one that most people turn to when they read de Crevecoeur, when they want to find out about colonial America. Overall, it's a very positive description of our country. The opening of the letter describes a very prosperous and orderly society. He mentions the good roads, the navigable rivers, and the lovely houses that people had built. And he goes on to discuss the idea of class, how the rich and the poor are not so far removed from each other. Then there's the government. He says that the government ties the people together with, as he says, silken bands, and that everybody follows the law because the laws are fair to everyone alike. It sounds nice. It sounds very nice. It sounds too nice, probably. Everyone obeys the laws because the laws are so fair. The government has silken bands. Nobody starts a fight. Nobody commits a crime. This sounds like utopia. And in fact, this letter is the most enthusiastic about the American colonies that de Crevecoeur lived in. What people remark upon from this letter is how de Crevecoeur describes Americans. He calls them a new breed of people, and then he describes that breed. The first thing he mentions about this new race, really, of people is that they're a mixture of different kinds of European people. And he lists the English, the Scots, the Irish, the French, and so on. So they're not a pure race, but the diversity of this new race has made it strong and vibrant. And what is interesting to de Crevecoeur is that this odd mixture came about because the people who came to the colonies did not have their own country, he says. Well, they came from a country, but de Crevecoeur says that their mother country didn't really take care of them. It didn't take care of them by giving them the opportunity to do something, to work at something, to be successful. They were left in a class system, in poverty mostly. So those first settlers were poor in their own countries, de Crevecoeur says, and became rich in the colonies because they had the opportunity to work for themselves and become successful. So according to de Crevecoeur, the colonies are comprised of poor people from Europe who worked hard to make something of themselves. And so the question he asks after describing this is, what then is the American, this new man? This man who comes from the mixture of European blood and who acts upon new principles, he says, to help make the greatest place on earth. One part of that greatness, he says, lies in the fact that the different kinds of Christians don't fight with each other like they do in Europe. In fact, the policy seems to be to leave your neighbor alone, no matter what he or she believes. And so he says that the Catholic lives next door to the Lutheran, and the Lutheran lives next door to the Dutchman, and so on. And what keeps everybody at peace is that they're all busy working in their fields, making themselves wealthy. Nobody has time to argue over the fine distinctions between the faiths because they have too much work to do in the fields. The result, he prophesies, is that the children of these different families will intermarry, and the kids who marry will be of different religions, but it won't matter to them. In fact, because of these intermarriages, de Crevecoeur believes that the colonists will become indifferent to matters of religion. So his letter describes a place which is the antithesis of Europe, and it makes large claims without any textual evidence to suggest that the colonies are really the perfect place to be on Earth. The question then is, how much of this is true? How perfect were the colonies, and how accurate is he about the new race arising from old races?